Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on DFARS, SPRS, NIST 800-171, and CMMC. My name is Kishore Vaswani. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of ControlCase, and I really appreciate the time you've taken today to attend this really interesting webinar for companies, especially who are part of the defense industrial base and serve the Department of Defense. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. The webinar is expected to run between 20 and 30 minutes. We will have time for a couple of questions, and beyond that, any other questions that are asked, we will email the responses to that to the person asking us those questions. As we go through the webinar, you can type your questions in the questions window, and if you have any issues hearing me or seeing the slides, you can type in the chat window and our moderators will be looking for any audio or visual difficulties. A copy of these slides will be shared with you next week, as well as this recording will be shared with you next week. Also, this webinar, along with all prior webinars on other topics like PCI and ISO, are available under the webinars section on www.controlcase.com. Again, we're very excited to have you attend this webinar on this topic on DFARS, SPRS, NIST 800-171, and CMMC. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. Our agenda today is to introduce ControlCase for a few minutes. We've all heard these acronyms, DFARS, CMMC, SPRS. We're going to talk about how do the acronyms interplay and what these are really in the overall scheme of things. Then we'll talk at a high level about the four individual topics of the webinar today, which is what is DFARS, what's NIST 800-171, what is the SPRS score, and what is CMMC. As we get towards the end, we feel it's important to let you know what you need to know and what you as companies can do today and where different regulations such as CMMC stand today. And finally, we'll have some time for a couple of questions, after which we will end this webinar and send out a copy of these slides as well as this recording next week. So a little bit about ControlCase. We focus on IT compliance and related continuous compliance services. That is all we do. We are a global company headquartered out of Fairfax, Virginia, but we do a lot of work obviously within the United States, but also globally. We have done more than 10,000 security certifications, and really a big focus for us is to make sure you trust ControlCase as your trusted compliance partner. And how we do it is really by not being a checklist auditor, but really having a partnership approach to certification and related continuous compliance services. Also, the ControlCase Compliance Hub, which enables streamlining the entire end-to-end certification and continuous compliance process, and it also streamlines the process of evidence collection. So between the partnership approach and the technology, which is the ControlCase Compliance Hub, we really streamline the process of IT certifications as well as continuous compliance services. Here are some of the certification services. For those of you who have special interest in the federal sector or in the defense industrial base, certainly CMMC, FedRAMP, NIST 800-171, and SPRS scores are areas where ControlCase can assist you in one or multiple of these initiatives. Besides that, we also certify companies to multiple other regulations like PCI DSS, ISO 27001, and so forth. All right, so we talked a little bit about ControlCase. I'm going to spend a few minutes on how these different acronyms really work with each other and what they really mean. So DFARS are really the overall regulations that have been set by the Department of Defense. So think of DFARS as the Department of Defense regulations. Now, they rely on a set of controls and the set of controls are based on the NIST 800-171 standard. So DFARS are the regulations, but they rely on the NIST 800-171 control framework. The SPRS score is the method to score against the NIST 800-171 framework. So DFARS are the regulations, NIST 800-171 is the control framework, and SPRS is essentially scoring on a scale on where a company ranks using NIST 800-171 control as the framework. CMMC is a framework that is currently in version 2.0, and as it gets published and finalized, it's going to get all these different aspects, DFARS, NIST, SPRS, all of these together, and obviously we'll speak about CMMC today as well. So first, let's talk about DFARS. So the DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, it was established in December 2015, and in order to be awarded new DoD contracts, a contractor or supplier must be in compliance with these Department of Defense regulations, which are outlined in DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. It was written and has a section that really focuses on protection of the confidentiality of the controlled unclassified information within the defense industrial base. So I mentioned earlier, DFARS is the standard that has been published by the Department of Defense, and it really is focused on protecting confidentiality of controlled unclassified information within the defense industrial base. And DoD contractors must be in compliance with the set of cybersecurity regulations as per these DFARS directives. So we talked about DFARS. Next, we're going to talk about NIST 800-171. So NIST 800-171, it really is published by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and that's what NIST stands for. So the NIST 800-171 assessment is a set of controls that outline exactly what controls must be in place to ensure that a good information security program is in place. The DFARS regulation rely on the NIST 800-171, and the NIST 800-171 will focus on ensuring that the entire coverage of controls across the ecosystem is appropriate. The NIST 800-171 control domains are domains that you will be very familiar with as part of other information security programs. So things like access control, personal security, security awareness and training, risk assessment, media protection, configuration management, physical protection. These are the control families that are part of the NIST 800-171. And further to these specific control families are various security requirements that have been taken from FIPS 200 and NIST 853, among others. So once again, the NIST 800-171 control domains really focus on ensuring that the controls that are being looked at as part of DFARS are holistic and are in line with leading security standards out there. Next, let's talk about the SPRS score. The SPRS score, or the Supplier Performance Risk System, is a self-certification score which is based on the NIST 800-171 control framework. So today, SPRS scores need to be supplied to the Department of Defense using the SPRS system, or the Supplier Performance Risk System. And SPRS is a self-certification score, which is basically a result of the NIST 800-171 assessment, and it provides contracting officials a score of the overall risk of the supplier. you have to maintain your scores current in the SPRS system, as per the DFARS regulation, always using the NIST 800-171 control framework. So we talked about DFARS, which is the base standard that the Department of Defense has put together. Then you have the NIST 800-171, which is the control family that DFARS relies on. Then we talked about the SPRS score, which is a self-scoring system on the NIST 853, and it is required for all Department of Defense contractors to publish that score within the SPRS system. Next, let's talk about CMMC. So the CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, it is a unifying standard for implementation of cybersecurity across the defense industrial base. It's currently on version 2.0. The prior version was CMMC 1.0. And the aim of CMMC is to get various aspects that we talked about today all together, so that the defense industrial base implements appropriate cybersecurity practices, so that the federal contract information and the controlled unclassified information is appropriately protected. So again, CMMC, or Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, is a unifying standard that really gets all the different aspects together: the DFARS, the NIST 800-171, which the DFARS relies on, and the SPRS score. Whom does CMMC apply to? It applies to the defense industrial base, and it could be folks who store, process, or transmit controlled unclassified information or federal contract information. So when you talk about CMMC, there are various levels that CMMC would refer to. In version 1.0, there were 5 levels. In version 2.0, there are 3 levels. It's level 1, level 2, and level 3. We at ControlCase have further broken level 2 into 2A and 2B, just to outline how different companies may be able to handle different classifications within level 2. But really, the CMMC standard focuses on 3 levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is companies that fall in level 1 who have FCI only are required to do a self-assessment. You could always have a CMMC RPO, such as ControlCase, assist you with it, but level 1s are required to do a self-assessment. Level 2 can be broken into 2 buckets. So if you have CUI, then you fall under level 2 or 3, and level 2 can further be broken into 2 buckets. If the information you manage is not critical to national security and you're in level 2, then you could still do a self-assessment. The number of controls is much larger in level 2 than in level 1. Again, we as a control case, as a CMMC RPO, can assist you with that. However, if the information that you manage is critical to national security, you will then need to get an official auditor, a C3PAO assessment done once every 3 years. So if you're in level 2, depending on whether your information is critical to national security or not critical, you could either do a self-assessment or a C3PAO assessment. Finally, if you're a level 3, which is really focused on some of the most critical defense programs, the government will conduct an audit once every 3 years. So there's level 1, 2, 3. 1 is always self-assessment. 2 could be a self-assessment or a C3PAO assessment, and level 3 is the government always conducting an audit. For level 1 and 2A, or for level 1 and a subset of companies that fall in level 2 and can do self-assessment, ControlCase can assist as an RPO, and the way we do it is we deploy our technology with the NIST 800-171 control. A level 1 has 17 practices, a level 2 has 110 practices. We then complete the scoping, make sure things are appropriate. After we have nailed down the scope, we do 50% review and 50% evaluation of the most important controls to your environment, especially the ones that might require remediation and could take longer. Finally, we finish the assessment and full evidence review and publish a self-assessment report, a level 1 or a level 2 self-assessment report. So we talked about CMMC, DFARS, NIST 800-171, and FedRAMP. Next, let's talk about what do you as companies need to do now? So I mentioned in the SPRS score section that if you are a part of the defense industrial base and doing work for the Department of Defense, you need to go to the supplier performance risk system, which the URL is outlined here, and obviously we'll be distributing the slides, and complete a self-assessment against the NIST 1-800-71 control framework and self-score yourself. The scores can range from negative to positive, and these are scores that must be transmitted using the SPRS system or the supplier performance risk system, and the score is really using NIST 800-171 as the control framework. Next, from a CMMC perspective, CMMC is on version 2.0. Until the DoD finishes its rulemaking process, the DoD is not going to approve inclusion of CMMC requirement under any DoD contract. So CMMC 2.0 has been published, but it's still in the rulemaking process, and so it is not a current requirement for inclusion under any DoD solicitation contracts. However, the DoD has provided resources at the link provided below to start helping companies to start getting compliant to the CMMC standard. And so companies can take this time to properly implement the NIST 800-171 controls, as well as other accompanying documents such as the system security plan and so forth. So again, the companies can take this time to actually implement the NIST 800-171 controls, because that is going to be the framework that's going to be used as part of the CMMC. However, the CMMC is going through the rulemaking process and gathering feedback process, and until then, the DoD will not be requiring CMMC under any DoD solicitation currently. However, the SPRS score, which is also based on the NIST 800-171 framework, must be submitted today. So we wanted to list down what you must do today, which is the SPRS score, and then how to get ready for CMMC, which is in version 2.0 and going through the final rulemaking process. As we get towards the end of the webinar, once again, certainly feel free to put questions in the questions window, and we'll make sure we answer a couple of them, and the remainder will get back to you by email. As we get closer to the end of the webinar, just a closing thought on ControlCase. So we are a CMMC RPO and can assist companies with self-assessment. We are a FedRAMP auditor, and we know how to do a controls assessment against the NIST 800-171 standard, and can certainly assist you in doing a risk assessment against the NIST 800-171 standard and coming up with a score that needs to be supplied to the SPRS database, also called the SPRS score. Besides the federal regulations we talked about, we do other regulations like PCI DSS, ISO 27001. We are formal auditors for those regulations as well. Our ControlCase Compliance Hub streamlines the evidence collection process through automation. It streamlines looking at settings such as data settings as well as log settings. We are able to do deep dives into your technology, such as vulnerability assessment and penetration testing as part or separately from any compliance regime you're trying to get compliant or certified to. And then finally, the ControlCase Compliance Hub provides end-to-end visibility to customers on where they stand in the assessment process. Our continuous compliance services focus on many things that require us and the customer to make sure we're on top of the different activities on a quarterly basis. And that could include scans, penetration tests, awareness training, logging and monitoring alerting, awareness training, and many other such areas and things and controls that need to be visited on a quarterly basis. In summary, we really focus on a partnership approach. We ensure that we use technology to streamline the process, and we try to make compliance and certification a continuous process instead of a point-in-time process. That being said, thank you for attending this webinar. Hopefully you learned about the different areas. Just in summary, DFARS are the defense regulations, NIST 800-171 are the control standards, SPRS is the score and scoring against the NIST 800-171 standard, and CMMC version 2.0 is undergoing the current rulemaking process, and it'll really tie the DFARS, NIST, and SPRS together. But it's never too late to get started because things like the system security plan and so forth can take a lot of time. Thank you for attending this webinar. I will answer a couple of questions as promised, and then for the remainder questions, we will email you the responses as we have captured them in today's session. The first question asks about the interrelation between NIST 800-171 and SPRS. So, in order to make sure it's crystal clear, NIST 800-171 are controls, and those controls are across these domains. For example, there might be access controls, password security requirements, requirements around audit logging, requirements around media protection, requirements around hardening the systems. So these are NIST 800-171 control domains. And these are actual controls that like you would see in any other security program. The SPRS score is an assessment against the NIST 800-171. So it is a self-assessment. So you as a company will download the NIST 800-171, and then you'll go through the different controls, and then you'll score yourself, and then you'll come up with a score for your company. It's certainly something where ControlCase can assist you, but you can also do it yourself. If ControlCase assists you, you have a report from us that shows how we as independent assessors have come and recommended your SPRS score. That's really a self-assessment that you can then submit to the supplier performance risk system. So the SPRS is a score that needs to be submitted, but it's based on the 800-171. Thank you for that question. The next question is on CMMC, and the question is talking about what are the timelines around CMMC and how should companies get ready? So this is another good question. And when we're talking about CMMC, there's a couple of things to remember. One is that CMMC has 3 levels, right? So first you have to identify, and you should already be trying to identify which level you are, level 1, level 2, or level 3. If you have FCI only, you're level 1. If you have CUI in addition to FCI, you're level 2 or 3. So firstly, what you can do now, and you should do now, is go through a scoping exercise and identify which level you are. Once you have done that, then you should look at, for the appropriate level, how many NIST 800-171 controls apply, and you should base that on the CMMC 2.0, which has been released earlier. So earlier there was CMMC 1.0, but now you should rely on CMMC 2.0 to understand that. However, today the DoD is not including CMMC under any solicitation because they're going through the rulemaking process. And so you can go to this website www.projectspectrum.io to get a head start on CMMC and to start implementing the controls and putting the system security plan. However, when it comes to CMMC, the final rulemaking has not happened, as against SPRS, which I talked about earlier, which has to be submitted now. That was all the time we had today. I really appreciate the time you have taken to attend this webinar. Go to our website at www.controlcase.com for other webinars from the past. We will send you a copy of the slides as well as a recording next week. Thank you once again. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you.